Man, I just really did not like this book. Hello and welcome to my channel. If this is your first time, my name is Hima-Jen. I am an English teacher living in southern Japan. I make videos about books, life in Japan, my two hedgehogs, Latte and Pumpkin. You know, there's a little something for everyone on my channel. So today I'm going to talk about the books I read in September of this year, 2019. Let's get some stats for you. Got my stats written down. So I read a total of 9 books and I DNF'd 1 book. I read a total of 3 physical books, 5 audiobooks, 1 ebook, and the book that I DNF'd would have been book 10, and that was also an audiobook. I read a total of 3,821 pages, not including the DNF. I DNF'd it around 38%. The books I read for this month received ratings between 5 and 2 stars. The first book I read was The Unnie Mooners by Christina Lauren. I will put the picture here because I listened to it on audiobook through my library and the app Libby. Fun fact, if you don't know, Christina Lauren is actually 2 people. Christina and Lauren came together under that pen name. So 2 gals writing some good books. They mainly write adult contemporary romances, I believe, and that's what The Unnie Mooners was. It is a romance, but there was just a brief bit of sexy time and it was quite tastefully done, so I wouldn't say it was, you know, smutty or anything. So we follow Olive and Ethan. Now, Olive's twin sister is getting married and Ethan's younger brother, Dean, is the groom. At the wedding reception, everyone eats this seafood buffet and gets very ill, except for Olive and Ethan. It's not like your average type of food poisoning that clears up, you know, in a day or 2. It was some serious type of toxin that takes like a month for you to get over it. Olive's sister Amy cannot go on her honeymoon, and she won the honeymoon in a sweepstakes. She's supposed to leave for Maui the next day. Since she won the honeymoon in a sweepstakes, the rules are super strict, like it has to be the same name. There's no refunds, no returns, no changing of the date or anything. So Amy tells her sister Olive, please go on this honeymoon for me. So it turns out that Ethan and Olive go on the honeymoon together. They have to pretend in front of the staff of the resort that they are a married couple. So I thought this was gonna be your typical hate to love romance, like they hate each other, then they go on the trip, and slowly but surely they fall in love, and then the trip ends and they're together, and then boom. That's what I thought was gonna happen. But one of the things I really liked about this book is that we continue to follow the 2 characters after they've returned home. And we're following them for quite a few weeks or a few months. I liked that aspect of it. I thought it was just a really nice, refreshing take on a hate to love romance. I liked both of the characters. I liked the way the story progressed. It was just light and fun. The narrator, she did a pretty good job. Hate to love has been done so many times. You know, their hate to love romances are a dime a dozen, but I felt like this one, I don't know, there was just something different about it and it was fresh and I liked it. And so I gave it 4 stars. The second book I read in September was Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare. This is the second book in the Infernal Devices series, so it's part of the Shadowhunters universe. Shadowhunters being Nephilim, half human, half angel, who hunt and kill demons. And we follow Tessa, Jem, and Will. Tessa is not a Shadowhunter. Nobody really knows what she is. She's thought her whole life that she was just a normal human, but it turns out she might not be. She's got something special going on there, and she becomes involved with the Shadowhunters universe. It is now October. It's October 5th, and I have actually finished Clockwork Princess also, but that's gonna be in my October wrap-up. I think Clockwork Prince was my favorite of all 3 books. I love this series so much. So it's an urban fantasy. It takes place in London in what, like the 1800s, 1880 or something like that. There's kind of a different way of speaking in the 1800s. There's obviously a different style of fashion, different kind of propriety rules and stuff, and I just love the way Cassandra Clare crafted this universe. I love all of the characters. I seriously don't think I can find one bad thing to say about this entire series. Absolutely in love from start to finish. And reading this has made me feel like I want to go back to the Mortal Instruments series and give it another chance. I only read the first 3 or 4 books in that series and I just kind of gave up. But I want to give it another chance because I just... 5 out of 5 stars, obviously. I highly recommend this book if you enjoy fantasy, if you enjoy especially like period dramas, so something that takes place, you know, in the past. There's a name for that, right? Like historical fiction, right? Historical fiction, fantasy, paranormal, romance. Loved this series. I'm already thinking about when I want to reread it. I loved it. So the next book I read, I also got from my library via Libby, and that is The Path Made Clear by Oprah Winfrey. I don't know why I picked this up. It was just calling to me and I wanted to read a good inspirational self-help book. It is very short. It's like 3 hours on audiobook. Like the title would lead you to believe, it's talking about how to find your path in life, and I don't know, for me it just felt like generic motivation. One good thing about the book though is that, so if you were reading it in physical form, it would be Oprah quoting, you know, she quotes a lot of inspirational people, like some of my favorite authors, Cheryl Strayed, Elizabeth Gilbert. There's people like Joe Biden. And if you were reading the physical book, you would just see what she quoted from them. But on the audiobook, you actually get to hear snippets of these interviews that Oprah has done with these people. Unfortunately, I felt like this book just barely scratched the surface. I expected a lot more from Oprah. It just kind of felt like inspirational fluff, I guess. And I was expecting something like more genuine. It kind of just all felt thrown together, like someone could have taken some of Oprah's best interviews and just smushed them all together in like a day and then boom, you've got an audiobook. Kind of disappointed me. I was just expecting a lot more. Oprah is an extremely successful entrepreneur and I just feel like she could have given us so much more, and like I said, just barely scratched the surface. So unfortunately, I ended up only giving this book 3 stars. You did me dirty, Oprah. I'm just kidding, but I mean, it's not like it was bad. It just fell flat of my expectations. The next book I listened to on audio was the Dream Thieves by Maggie Stiefvater. That is the second book in the Raven Cycle series. So book 1 of the Raven Cycle series, the Raven Boys. We meet these 4 boys from a prestigious academy. They're in high school and they are on a paranormal quest. They end up meeting a girl who is the daughter of a psychic and she lives in a household full of psychics. She is not a psychic herself, but she does have powers. She has been told from a very young age that if she kisses her true love, he will die. She joins the boys on their quest. This is a 4-book series, so I'm imagining that we're going to be continuing the quest throughout the 4 books. This book, I was like, are we still on the paranormal quest, or did we just throw that shit out the window? It was odd. It was very odd. Like I seriously felt like they just abandoned the quest and there's this whole other new thing that came up. And I can't talk about it, obviously, because it would spoil you. We are focused on one of the Raven Boys in particular, Ronan. A lot of focus on him, a lot of focus on a new character that comes in called the Gray Man. I wanted more of that group dynamic that I loved so much in the first book, and we didn't really get that. The characters were kind of off doing their own things. My voice is doing the thing again where it keeps going up. Yeah, I just felt like they were on a totally different mission, and to be honest, I really didn't know what the hell that mission was. I swear to God, half the book was about Ronan wanting to drive Gansey's old classic car. It was talked about so much. Since I already know and love the characters, I did still enjoy the book, but I think I would have enjoyed it far less if I didn't already love the characters. I mean, to sum up this book in one word would just be confusion. So I ended up giving this book 3 stars. I will definitely continue on with the series. It's narrated by Will Patton, and he does such a wonderful job. I'm excited to see where the next book goes. So book 3 is called Blue Lily, Lily Blue, and I've heard from a lot of people that that's their favorite book. It's a very popular series, so you might have read it yourself, or surely you've known someone who has read it. So I don't know, does the cheese stand alone here? Am I the only one that thought it was rather odd? I don't know, man. The next book I read it on ebook, and that is The Bookish Life of Nina Hill by Abby Waxman. Gosh. If you have seen any of my vlogs from September, you would have heard me talk about this book. Man, I just really did not like this book. So we focus on Nina Hill, who is in her late 20s, and she works in a bookstore, and she lives on her own, and she's got anxiety, supposedly. I don't think she was a true representation of a character with anxiety. I'll explain more about that later. But she writes like all of her tasks in her journal, and what's cool about the book, and actually what prompted me to read the book, is I had heard that there's actual like handwritten planning, you know, like a handwritten schedule at the start of each chapter, and I love it when books do stuff like that. She's around my age, she works in a bookstore, she's got anxiety, she likes books more than people. It's like, I'm gonna get along with this chick, right? No! The main thing I did not like about this book is the writing style. The author goes on these ridiculous tangents. The author breaks the fourth wall. The author overcapitalizes things. Like, instead of saying Nina was on a diet, she would capitalize a diet. Nina was on a diet. Like, and if it just happened once or twice, it wouldn't bother me so much, but it kept freaking happening. But the worst thing was the tangents. Like, I can't even... So here's one tangent that she goes on. She's like on a date, and they go to an ice cream shop, or they pass an ice cream shop. And she's talking about how there's these 2 ice cream shops in her neighborhood and how they're like rivals. And then she's like, I wonder if in the streets at night they get together and they freaking chuck scoops of ice cream at each other. And what are you talking about? Okay, I'm looking at my TV right now because I have my computer hooked up to the TV. So here's just one like dumb example of the writing. Without giving herself time to think it over and change her mind, she texted him, "Hi, this is Nina from the bookstore." Then she closed her phone and went back to her book. It buzzed. The phone, not the book. Like, yeah, we know. So now she's talking about she goes inside someone's home and she says, there was a vague smell of wood smoke and the inside of dog's ears. What? I'm going to talk about the freaking ice cream tangent now. They turned into one of the 2, yes 2, artisanal ice cream stores on the boulevard. Sometimes Nina imagined their workers, late at night, coming out onto the street, scoopers at the ready, or maybe with a giant ice cream trebuchet, I think that's like a catapult thing, throwing enormous balls of frosty death at one another, competing to be the ice cream monarch of Larchmont Village. An Ennio Morricone version of an ice cream truck jingle would hang in the air, and in the middle of August, the ice cream would melt on the hot street and cream would run in the gutters. Going on these type of tangents, for me, add nothing to the story. They're very distracting. Maybe you like that type of writing. I don't. I like a very simple style of writing. I looked at the Goodreads reviews for The Bookish Life of Nina Hill, and they are quite high. So I think I am just alone in this. A lot of people seem to like this writing style. Honestly, there was some problematic things about this book too. Like, one of the quotes she says was, "There was no one in the bookstore except for this guy who lived in the neighborhood and had some sort of developmental disability." Like, I don't know why you would say that. In another part, one of the characters says, "I guess instant attraction is just a family trait." And another character responds with, "Better than a cleft palate." And then the character says, "Are cleft palates genetic?" And I just feel like that's not funny. Jokes about cleft palates are not funny. She made one very obscure Simpsons reference, and I'm a huge Simpsons fan. And the second Simpsons reference she made was quite well known. It's about that gif of Homer like sliding back into the hedge. I was like, oh cool, she's a Simpsons fan, but for me that's not enough to make a bad book a good book. The cover was cute, the little handwritten lists were cute, though the handwriting was damn near impossible to read. It was very, very, very occasionally funny. The thing about her supposedly being a character with anxiety, apparently she has anxiety that is so crippling that sometimes she faints from it, but yet she still has a full-time job and has an excellent relationship with her coworkers and her boss. She has a thriving social life, so she goes to book clubs, she hosts book clubs, she is on a quiz bowl team or a trivia team, and they compete regularly. She's got a great group of friends. She has no problem meeting new people. That's, as a woman with anxiety, I don't have any of those things, and so I just couldn't really relate to her. Supposedly she likes books and her cat, and the cat fucking talks apparently, yet she is going to social events almost every day. Just not relatable for me. So a 1 star, in my opinion, is a book that is so bad it shouldn't even be published. So I gave this book 2 stars, as I recognize that there are some people that enjoy this type of writing style. I personally hated it. I'm done. I'm never talking about Nina Hill ever again. The next book I read was Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan. I listened to this on audiobook through my library. So it is narrated by Lin Chen, and she starred in one of my favorite movies called Saving Face. It's quite a few years old, but Lin Chen just freaking nailed the accents. She was a fantastic narrator, and for me, she really added to the story, so I highly recommend the audiobook version of Crazy Rich Asians. Unfortunately, I didn't really love this book, so we're following a ton of characters, and at first it was very hard for me to keep them all straight. And we're following characters in China, in Singapore, in America, in Paris, and I'm just like, who is who and what's going on? And I do feel like this book was a lot longer than it needed to be, very, very slow paced. Really, the only character I cared about was Astrid and Astrid's life, what's gonna happen to Astrid. Like, Nick and Rachel are the main characters. So Rachel is Chinese American, Nick is very wealthy from a family that lives in Singapore, and Rachel doesn't know that Nick is rich, and so he decides to take her home for the summer so she can meet his family and so he can attend his best friend's wedding. So yeah, Rachel doesn't know what she's getting into with Nick's whole crazy family. They're crazy rich, and they are also, you know, there's a lot of unspoken rules that an outsider would not understand. The me from 10 years ago would probably have adored reading this book. Kevin Kwan goes into a lot of detail about the fashions, just the opulence, the furnishings of the home. Very, very detailed in that. Anything from the food that they're eating to the cars that they're driving, the fashions that they're wearing. He describes this all in exquisite detail. And me, who was, you know, younger and used to like stuff like this, like I've read a book called Bergdorf Blondes or something, like, oh, I wonder what it would be like to be rich, and like, wouldn't that be so nice? And now I have literally zero desire to be filthy rich. It just seems like a lot of freaking work to me, to be honest with you. So I wasn't fawning over the elaborate, crazy lifestyle that they were living. I can't even say that I enjoyed this book for the cultural aspect, because obviously it's a very skewed version. Like, it's not like I read a book about Singaporean culture, you know. Obviously dramatic, and I can't be like, oh well, I read in Crazy Rich Asians that all Singaporean people dislike people from mainland China. So that's true, right? Like, it's just a work of fiction, and you have to take everything that he says with a grain of salt. Though Kevin Kwan is Singaporean, it's still a work of fiction. You can't just take something from this book and believe it to be a cultural fact. Maybe there are some truth to the book about, you know, what life is like in Singapore, how Singaporean people think. I don't know. We have to take it with a grain of salt, because it's the characters and everything that happens in the book is a product of Kevin Kwan's imagination. What I would like to read, and maybe there are some out there, would be an article describing what things in Crazy Rich Asians are actually true. I mean, if you're someone that wants to read about a crazy, over-the-top, you know, elaborate, rich lifestyle, then I think you would really enjoy this book. I just felt like it was longer than it needed to be. The last 2 hours I was really, really interested, and that kind of saved the book for me. Also, there was a very vicious dogfighting scene described in detail, and that almost made me not want to finish the book, to be honest with you. But yeah, then it's over, and then you don't hear any more about animal cruelty, but I was not expecting that, so yeah. I ended up giving Crazy Rich Asians 3 stars. The next book I read in September was A Gathering of Shadows by V.E. Schwab, or Victoria Schwab. So this is the second book in the Shades of Magic series, the first book being A Darker Shade of Magic. It is about 4 Londons from parallel worlds, and a character who is a blood magic magician that can travel between the 4 Londons. Red London, White London, Gray London, and Black London. I can't say too much about this because it's the second book and I don't want to spoil it for you. I will say this book gave me strong Goblet of Fire vibes. As to why that is, I'm not gonna say. A lot of new characters introduced in this. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. This is a special edition, so it's got some fan art in it, and I did keep referring to the fan art so I could look at the newer characters. There is a glossary of terms, because in this world, in the Red London world, they speak a different language called Arnesian, I believe. When someone was speaking Arnesian, I could flip to the back and look and see actually what they were saying. Victoria Schwab is someone who I feel like writes simply and to the point, but at the same time her writing is very beautiful. It's not overly purple prosy to me, it's not overly descriptive, it's just beautifully executed writing, and I am a big fan of her writing style, a big fan of this world and the characters. I enjoyed it. I devoured it in like a couple of days. I cannot wait to read the 3rd book in the series. And of course, this book got 5 stars from me. God, my foot is asleep. Ouch. The next book I listened to was a thriller, and that was The Wife Between Us by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen? This is, I guess, like a domestic thriller, but I would categorize it more as suspense. There wasn't any really like heart-stopping moments that you expect from a thriller, but a lot of kind of little twists and turns and little creepy vibes going on. It involves a man, his ex-wife, and his new fiance. If you have read the book The Girl on the Train, it did kind of remind me of that, though of course the plot points aren't nearly the same, but it was just giving me Girl on the Train vibes. From the beginning, I just felt like something's not quite right about all three of these people. Like there's something fishy going on here. And of course, as the story goes on, things are exposed. I knew that everyone kind of had skeletons in their closet, and I wanted to keep reading to be like, what are you hiding from me? I would say Girl on the Train vibes, maybe a little bit of Gone Girl vibes too. Don't take that as what I'm saying is what happened in Gone Girl is gonna happen in this book. But just like the overall feeling, like, ooh, what's going on here? I'm explaining it so poorly. So I thought I had guessed the plot. I was like, this is what's gonna happen. This is definitely what's happening. And I was wrong. So that's always fun. You know, it's never fun when a book is predictable, and that's always nice when you think something's going one way and then you're like, whoa, I was totally wrong. And that's what happened for me. The narrator, she did a good job. She had a very pleasant voice. I would say she did a really good job. She led to the kind of creepy feel with her voice. It wasn't a book that blew my mind or anything, but I did genuinely enjoy it, and for that reason I gave it 4 stars. Before I talk about the last book I read, I want to give a quick nod to my DNF, and that was Present Over Perfect by, hang on, gosh, her name, Shauna Nyquist. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. So this is a religious self-help book, and it's not like I didn't like it for the religious aspect of it, although I would consider myself to be agnostic. I don't really jive with organized religion, but that wasn't what threw me off of the book. I just felt like I had absolutely nothing in common with the author and what she was trying to achieve. So she is a busy mom, she's married, she has a thriving social life, she has a lot of obligations, you know, for church and with her career as a writer. She has familial obligations. The book is focused on her learning to say no more and learning to live in the present moment. And that is just so far from me. I'm a single woman, never been married, no kids. I literally sit in my house by myself all freaking day long when I don't go to work. And I play with my hedgehogs. I don't talk to anybody. I have almost no friends. There's no obligation that I need to say no to. You know, the author is trying to say, like, you need to say no to participating in so many things so you can enjoy time by yourself, reflection time. And I'm like, you don't understand. I'm by myself so much to the point where, like, it's a problem. It cannot be this healthy for a human being to be by themselves 99.99999% of the time. And that's me. And obviously she is just in a totally different universe than I'm in. So if you are a married woman or a mom and you find yourself, you know, too busy, no time to be alone and reflect, and that you need to slow down from your busy life, then I think this would be a good book for you. But unfortunately it was not for me for obvious reasons, and I did DNF it at 38%. The last book I read, Gemina, book 2 of the Illumination Files by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. I am a huge lover of sci-fi. It's probably my favorite genre. It is no surprise that I loved the living daylights out of this book. This is what it looks like with the cover off. You have probably heard of this series before, but it is told in mixed media. Oh, look at that art. There's art in here too, which is by Marie Lu, I believe, who is also an author. Man, it's just, The series is so well done. I've said it before, I'll say it again, they're sci-fi books, they're thrillers, horror, there's some romance, just all wrapped up into one. The format of the book is mixed media, so that is always fun. Never boring. So again, mixed media content, so it's told in the form of video surveillance, emails, instant messages. There's art, as I said. We follow different characters. We follow Nick and Hannah, whereas in book 1 we followed Katie and Ezra. I enjoyed Nick and Hannah. If I wanted to nitpick, which I personally don't want to nitpick, but I could see how some people would say that this was awfully similar to Illuminate in that we have the strong female lead, a charming male counterpart, a race against time. But for me, it's a formula that works, and I felt that there were enough differences to say that I wasn't thinking like, oh, this is just Illuminate all over again. Like, I didn't feel that way at all. I felt like, okay, I could kind of see some similarities, but for me it works. It was beautifully executed, highly entertaining, definitely heart-stopping. So many times where I was just like, oh my god. Huge fan of this series. I would say the Infernal Devices series, so Clockwork Princess, Clockwork Angel, and the Illumination Files are 2 of my top favorite series of all time. So I've got 1 book left in the Illumination Files, and that is Obsidio, and I'm going to be reading it this month, you bet your bottom dollar. A book that was on my TBR that I did not get to, unfortunately, was Scarlet, which is book 2 of the Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. I'll get to it eventually, but I did have a pretty good reading month. Despite there being a couple of duds, there were still some really good ones. And yeah, I've been talking for like 2 hours. Thank you so much for watching. As I said, I live in Japan. I talk about my life in Japan in my vlogs. I show my hedgehogs in my vlogs. So if that sounds like something you're into, feel free to subscribe. That's it for me. I gotta go, so I will see you guys in my next video.